What's up? What's up? Welcome. I didn't even realize that the intro had ended. Welcome. Good to see you guys. It is Reality Decoded, brought to you courtesy of Ship Video Productions, and it has been a long and overdue live stream, so it's good to see some regular offenders here and some new faces. Welcome, Mark Duck 2023. Welcome, Trip. Long time no see. Always faithful. Nancy Fan Guy, our regular Cajun agent, is in the house, and of course we've got Baby P, Becky Pamplin with the wrench, and there is our little dance in Darcy Lopez singing a lot, not giving dumpster tuggies in the cold frigid weather, I hope. Good to see you. And Maiden is also here. Welcome, Maiden. I can't see you. You're not showing up on my comments. So it is Reality Decoded. As I said, it has been a little bit long overdue. Good to see all of you here in the house. So without further ado, let's get rid of my thumbnail and welcome you to the Reality Decoded Thrift Store Studio. As you know, we were TSP TV, still are TSP TV, but due to copyright strike status, we are still unable to go live over there for another month. So as you guys do know, I've been following along the events and endeavors here at Reality Decoded. It's been a little bit of a stumbling out of the starting block since we started this just before Christmas, or was it just after Christmas? I don't know. Time has very little meaning now, living in the COVIDian era, and it is almost 1 year of living under the COVIDian era now, and it's almost a year, not necessarily to the day, but it is getting very close to the point of a year that my restaurant closed down. Before it was a global pandemic, we here in Toronto, in Ontario, Canada, were advised that bars and restaurants should shut down as a precautionary measure to prevent the spread of COVID. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks to flatten the curve turned into 2 months to flatten the curve, and here we are 1 year later, flattening the curve. And if anything, the curve is bent as they tell us it is. And is it ever going to be flattened? Probably not. It's very dystopian. When this all started, we kind of did have a little bit of hopes that we would regain a little bit of a normality, but unfortunately normality seems to be something that is becoming long and forgotten, and maybe even something that will become extinct like the dodo. But 2021, some people couldn't get rid of 2020. 2021, the sequel, 2020 part 2, 2021, bigger, better, bolder, stronger, a little bit like Steve Austin. And if you kind of remember in the New Hope, the first Star Wars movie, you know, all ended well with the Death Star destruction. But come the sequel, fuck me, didn't the Empire strike back and give those poor Rebel Alliance members a good run for their money across the galaxy? But we are, as I said, in the very early days of 2021, and the PSYOP just continues to get larger and greater and more dystopian. Exactly, it is here to stay. The level and the extent of, you know, how much government are spending on this COVID nonsense, how much apps are being, you know, the tracking app, you can't open Facebook without them asking to take a COVID survey. You know, almost everybody is giving you COVID advisory recommendations. If you go to the store, if you go to the bank, if you even like call the online people to try and speak to them, they give you COVID propaganda down the line via an automated teller. So it doesn't look as though it's going to be going away at all, if ever, and this is going to be used a little bit like the never-ending war from George Orwell's 1984. It kind of kept everybody sort of safe and secure and under the control through fear, and a little bit like the Patriot Act that was introduced in the aftermath of 9/11. We now kind of have pretty much essentially pandemic acts in here in Toronto, Canada. We are currently under a new bylaw known as Open Ontario, and basically it's got even more draconian than ever could have imagined, and we really are heading to what looks like the Soylent Green Society that I did predict and forewarn you all in the very, very early days of the pandemic. Is this what is going to be used to usher in that Soylent Green Society, as long with quite another lot of things that I have been telling you about over the COVIDian times? Does certainly seem to be falling into place. Not that I want to be that I told you so, I'm not here to declare that I am a prophet, but some of it is coming very, very, very real and evident in real time in front of our eyes. Indeed, this has been extremely, extremely programmed for many years, and something I've actually been watching recently in my time that I haven't been YouTubing is a classic British sci-fi series known as Survivors, and it was out in 1975. Funny enough, it was 2 years after the Soylent Green movie was released, but Survivors premiered on British TV back in the 1970s and is full of 1970s British sci-fi charm. Very worth watching. Is available on YouTube to watch for free in its entirety. I will put the link up on Facebook and maybe in the Discord for you. But it's come out in the 1970s along with Soylent Green and along with Logan's Run, two very prophetic pieces of fiction, and two pieces of fiction I have mentioned a great deal of time on TSP TV, and some of those topics I have mentioned have also been censored, removed, blocked, copyrighted, whatever, taken down from YouTube. Are that because, you know, we may have stepped on some toes with copyright infringements, or are we getting a little bit too close to the mark of letting them know, and letting people know where we are being herded towards? And is COVID-19, this whole pandemic, part of the human farming, part of ushering in the one world order and using the pandemic a little bit like the Patriot Act to kind of control us, say something, see something? We've got people ratting out their neighbours for maybe going out and walking a dog when they shouldn't be. People who may be breaking self-isolation and quarantine rules. These people are being ratted out by their family members. I've heard a couple of reports where kids have reported their parents to the authorities for breaking bylaws. But here in Toronto, now under the Open Ontario Act, police have the ability to go over to any individual on the street, question them, ask them for ID, and then decide if or not that individual has broken the Open Ontario bylaws, and by that doing something that the police officer deems is non-essential. So, you know, you can go to work, you can get a little bit of exercise. Welcome, Melody. I just realized what it is. I was going to say Melody, but it's Melody. Melody and sings a lot. Look at that. You could get together and do some harmonies for us. But not only can these police approach you and ask you what you're doing, ask you to identify yourself, if they see that you have kind of broken the bylaws under the Ontario under the Open Ontario Act, they can fine you, and more disturbingly, they can imprison you. That's right, they can imprison you. Some of you guys who do follow TSP TV for a while, you may remember little Barefoot Judy. We saw her down at the lockdown process. She come out to the beach one time. We cooked some prison ramen and made a bonfire during the summer months. She's been sort of popping around and paying me some visits, bringing me some care packages, bless her, wherever you are, Barefoot Judy. But she's a wonderful, peaceful little lady. She used to make cakes and bring cookies and hand out to people with the protesters, and was a ball of energy, a ray of sunshine, a little bright light, you know, in the darkness of all of this. Got herself arrested a couple of weeks back in Toronto. She was at the protest. She was leaving the protest on her home, carrying her cakes, carrying a little bullhorn. And the police descended on her. Quite a few police officers heavy-handed her, put the cuffs behind her back, which if you get cuffed behind your back, that is because you are deemed a danger. And they put her in a police car, took her off to the police station, printed her mugshot, and detained her until her lawyer came to bail her out. Now, that is an individual that was just out and about on a Saturday afternoon, exercising their right to protest and free assembly, and was for no other reason than being out and being there, and maybe being part of the lockdown movement, was therefore arrested and taken off and detained against her will, and now has a criminal record and is facing a court case. And that is just one example, and that is somebody that I know. How many other people in Ontario that I don't know have similar experiences of this? And why I'm talking about this in reference to Soylent Green: streets prohibited, authorized personnel only. That is the opening lines of the 1973 classic movie starring Charlton Heston, Soylent Green. Welcome, welcome. Do we have Shane in the house? We have got a few new faces. It's making me feel a little bit nervous, to be all honest. But Soylent Green is something that I have mentioned time and time again, and have mentioned many times that I have mentioned it. It is probably as prophetic as Orwell's 1984 and the lesser known Orwell Animal Farm, where all animals are equal except some animals are more equal than others. And again, with regards to human farming, that is where we are. We're being farmed and ushered towards the one world order. The pandemic, if or not there is a virus, if or not they've just rebadged and rebranded the flu and they're calling it COVID-19 now, who knows? But we do have some medical people for that, through thick and thin, that tune into TSP TV and Reality Decoded. One of them, which is among us now, won't say a name just because maybe job discrepancy and stuff, but she works in a hospital. 0 patients, or I think maybe there was 1 patient that was there under sort of the guise of COVID watch, or with COVID symptoms. I live very close to a hospital. Excuse me, let me get some water. It's been a long time since I've spoken. I'm already out of breath. Prepper Chick in Texas. So glad to see you, my sweet. It's not the same without you here. One of the original OG thrift fam gangster chicks. Got arrested once back in the day, topless and drunk in the streets. Not sure where it was again. Were you in Texas or Florida? But she is a little bit of a rebel, as I think nearly all of us that do tune into Reality Decoded and TSP TV have a little bit of rebellion. And before we do go out any further with what I was saying, do forgive me if I get sidetracked. I am a little bit out of practice. We do have some deep roots, and we do have quite a few members of the community here at Reality Decoded and at TSP TV, the thrift fam, that are Texas based. Some of them are here, some of them aren't here. Texas, what the fuck? You're colder than Canada right now, and you poor guys, some of you are without power, some of you are snowed in, iced. Yeah, Cajun agent, we've got another look. Nancy, you've got another Louisiana buddy in the form of Marduk. As I said, we do have a lot of folks that do watch from Texas, so my empathy goes out to you. I live in Canada. Maiden, you're up here, sort of almost Montana's practically Canada. You are one of those individuals in the northern part of the hemisphere that deals with brutal winters and the conditions that the poor Texans are getting right now. But Texas, it's not really accustomed to such acts of nature, I guess, and is a little bit shell-shocked as a result of it. And the infrastructure that is designed more for a warm climate is not necessarily best dealt with frigid and frosty conditions. But at the same time, can't help think that a state that is designed for hot temperatures and air conditioning running non-stop throughout the summer might sort of be able to cope with a few space heaters and additional, radiators and things being used. But something that does happen here sometimes in Canada during the winter, and I'm guessing elsewhere in colder states, is sometimes ice builds up on the power lines and they will bring it down, or sometimes trees topple over and high winds take it out. It has been accustomed to happen in time and time again. There's nothing worse than having no power when it is cold and frigid outside. And in the 9 years that I've spent in Toronto, Canada, I have actually experienced two of the worst Canadian winters in history. One of which I spent in a house where the landlord at the time, is a different place where I'm living now, but the landlord at the time never put the heating on in the winter. I used to have ice on the inside of my glass. The toilet seat, you go and take a piss or a dump and it just plop on a dollop of ice. So I do sympathize with you guys. But on the bright side, next week it's supposed to be 70 degrees down there, where unlike Canada, it still will be below zero and will be for the foreseeable. We've actually got snow going on right now, and that is due to go on right until tomorrow. And with weather like that, and certainly with weather like you guys are seeing down in Texas, there's possibly, why would I want to go out? I don't want to go out even if I had to go out right now. So it is a little bit of blessing that you do have these sort of isolations, shelter in place kind of suggestions as a result of COVID-19. But if or not, and this is a question for debate, maybe a question for you all while you're here, is what's going on in Texas natural, or is this manipulation, man-made events part of the psyop? We've already got COVID fucking throwing the day after tomorrow into the sequel. That's just going to add further disruption and distress to an already disrupted and distressed society. People down there in Texas, are already struggling and feeling the pinch. Businesses that are closing, and now this is an impact in the further impact it's going to have on agriculture, cattle, livestock, seeding. It was only the other day that JBG Prepper Chicken Texas said that she's getting ready for spring. She'd put some plants and seeds out. How many other Texans have done this? How many farmers have done all this? And when something is very unprecedented and sort of the first time that it's ever happened, is that an act of nature, or is that a man-made act using manipulation of nature against us? And it's very hard to sort of take a winter storm into a court of law and charge it with manslaughter or murder on a mass degree, right? If you see what I'm saying, there's no blame if it was an act of nature, and something that some insurance companies will not insure you for is acts of nature, or acts of God as they call them, or acts of terrorism, unless of course you're Larry Silverstein and you've got very, very high-powered lawyers to write you a special contract to include acts of terrorism in that insurance policy. And then luck be have it if a few weeks later, after you got that contract signed, sealed and delivered to your bank and insurance broker, a huge terrorist act took place on the exact property that you took the insurance out. That may be quite the windfall if you were trying to do an inside job, or an insurance job rather. Inside job, insurance job, pretty much the same thing. But back to Texas, we know of organizations and government agencies such as HARP that do specialize in weather manipulation. We know NASA have the ability to create weather systems. And this is nothing new. Back in the 1900s, I believe, back in Southern California, San Diego, a place that I used to live in, wish to God I was there right now instead of cold, frigid Ontario, Canada right now. But there was a drought down there, and the San Diego Tribune, I believe it was, put an announcement or an advertisement in their newspaper, said, listen, if anybody can make it rain, we've got $100,000 for you. And lo and behold, this man sort of shot some electrons and some other stuff into the air, into some cloud systems, and lo and behold, it rained. And there was an incident back in, I believe, the 1950s or early 60s in the UK, where the RAF, the Royal Air Force of the United Kingdom, the British Isles, carried out a secret clandestine experimentation on weather modification which resulted in a small town being flooded in the middle of, sort of a heat wave, unseasonably out of nowhere. This storm come in, flooded, killed a few cows and pigs and sheeps, as well as a few inhabitants of that small city. Something I might have to dig up and look a little bit further on, because I'm rusty on my knowledge of that. But it is a documented event. It is out there. Weather modification exists, and as we say with everything in the conspiracy realms, electromagnetic frequencies, are you able to tune them and finally tweak them in order to manipulate the minds of the masses? And we do know that the ability for the government to tune TV antenna, radio antennas, even the frequencies in our cellular devices, they can finally tune these to implant thoughts in our minds. If you have the power and the technology to do this, why wouldn't you? But as we said, is the events in Texas part of weather modification? Is this all part of the deep state agenda to add further distress to an already distressed and disrupted society as a result of the pandemic? Now, again, if you are kind of trying to sort of remove a little bit of democracy and introduce a sort of totalitarian fascist socialism, singular one world government on you, you'd need to sort of eradicate any aggressors or oppressors to that happening and taking place. And like in Star Wars, how Emperor Palpatine used the Trade Federation as the Phantom Menace, as the threat to the Galactic Empire that needed drastic and emergency powers and measures being implemented and given to him in order to combat the threat of the Phantom Menace. And he then created a clone army. And what the Clone Wars did was pretty much eliminate anybody that would stand against the Empire taking control of the galaxy before they took control of the galaxy, removing the enemy before you even get to the battlefield. And in terms of defiant states, in terms of states that may be a little bit rebellious, the Lone Star State, good old Texas down there, would probably be one of them, if not the state of dissidence and defiance towards a fascist or socialist takeover of the nation, of the collapse of the federal government. You'd imagine that would be a place that would have more militia and more AR-15s in trucks and gun-toting, yeehaw, Stetson wearing, cigar smoking, Budweiser drinking, all-American good old boys. I mean that in the most wholeheartedly sincerity to Texas. But that would be, the Alamo spirit and all that kind of stuff. You'd think that Texas would be a little bit resilient to such things. So maybe if you could cripple Texas before they do start deploying the military on the street, and maybe part of this weather modification psyop down there will see, well, you know what, to keep you safe from the snow and ice and COVID, we need to keep the military on the streets. And the military are already on the streets in DC and are going to be for the foreseeable future, I think, till the end of the year. They're supposed to be there to keep people safe. We've got ATN. Welcome, buddy. Long time to see. A fellow Canuckian, although I'm not actually Canadian, I'm British. I just live in Canada. But you are in Quebec, the neighbouring province to Ontario, although Quebec is pretty much essential its own entity, a little bit like Texas. You kind of sort of think Texas would be a state that could kind of pretty much sustain itself and sustain itself for some foreseeable future. It's got power, it's got oil, it's got livestock, agriculture, it's next to the ocean. Probably couldn't want to be in a better state than Texas, and I'm pretty sure most Texans will agree. Although I did spend some time in California, my heart will always belong a little bit to Southern California. There is a little bit of Texas in there too, mainly because of the Texan Roses that tune in and have supported me throughout this time. So the tools and weaponry and technology that the deep state really have to use against us, it doesn't really sort of warrant thinking about, because it will give you more nightmares than you want. And again, Star Wars, they had a fucking Death Star. All the blasters and lightsabers in the world aren't going to defend you from a Death Star strike. Am I right? Can I get a yes? Shah. 99% of you might not be brave enough to agree with that statement, but knowing what we are up against does give you a little bit of a chance of trying to combat it. And within the realms of what the COVID pandemic is, again, this is a psychological warfare on humanity. And according to Hegelian dialect, or Hegelian dialect, however you choose to say it, with problem, reaction, solution, those being manipulated by the problem in order for the problem to work need to pick a side, be it pro or against whatever the agenda is. And then usually those who react against it are kind of used as the enemy and the reasoning for implementing the solution to the problem. And we have in under the COVID guys, that divide of to mask or not to mask. Those people who are very, let's just stay at home, socially distant. What don't people understand about self-isolation? Stay the fuck at home, yada yada, whoop-de-woo, ray-tay-tay. Part of the programmatics, part of the propaganda, and how these sort of memes in social media posts and stuff are used as a form of propaganda, and how people who are a little bit subjected to and dopamine perhaps might be inadvertently being used as a tool of deep state propaganda by agreeing and sharing this medical propaganda that supports the narrative or the desired narrative of the psyop, just as much as we are being controlled on the other side of that spectrum, and don't think without a shadow of a doubt that somewhere there is some controlled opposition that is leading the piper, leading that particular herd of sheep or rats or whatever you want to slaughter, and towards the ultimate solution of the pre-planned problem. We are just a reaction. And by reacting in these ways, we kind of, are acting in accordance to the desired reaction, right? If we act against the way that the reaction depicts we should react, it falls apart, right? The problem, reaction, solution falls apart if you don't react in the way. Thank you, Amar. I appreciate your support and nice comments, supportive comments there. And hopefully this is your first time, but you may become a little bit of a regular offender. But, we're being ushered towards what is the one world order. They are removing our rights, our liberties, and our freedoms piece by piece. We're seeing more and more emergency measures, and I believe they're even going to bring more emergency measures on top of the emergency measures into the Texas situation. Good news though, Texas, FEMA are on their way. They're coming down there to help you out with trucks and stuff, and they're also going to be setting up quarantine vaccination sites. Don't know if or not that's going to be a code word for concentration camp, but bear in mind the death camps of Eastern Europe weren't labeled as death camps. We're just going to go and re-educate you or relocate you. Get on the train, don't worry about a thing. At the end, there's a little bit of a shower, clean yourself up, you'll be fine and dandy after that. We've got housing and everything for you at these camps. And again, with these possible, vaccination sites, are they going to give you a little bit of a spray down before you get off? You get off the bus, give you a spray. Now you can go into the sites. What the fuck are they spraying you with? What are they going to inject you with? And believe it or believe it not, the concentration camps were not a product of National Socialist Germany. No. They were the product of the British Empire. And before they used a gas that kind of very, very conveniently, quickly and efficiently removed the population of those concentration camps, they used blankets and clothing that had been contaminated with influenza. And down hoopties, my darling, my God, I was thinking about you. Long time no see, my sweet. So glad. Hugs to you, Hoops. But the Boers, and you've probably never even heard of the Boers, and the reason why, because the genocide worked, and the Boers were kind of colonial Belgians and Dutch and local Afrikaans that kind of formed their own little country and sort of controlled a little bit of the diamond and gold industry down there in South Africa. But the British Empire They wanted to get their finger in their pie. So they kind of had a little bit of a war and some conflict down there, and then started rounding up people for their own safety and taking them off to these relocation isolation camps. And then when they were in the camps, here you go, here's your bedding, here's some clothing for you. But the clothing and bedding was, rich with influenza. And it did its job, and they sort of isolated these people with the infection away from the rest of the population so that it wouldn't spread. And thus, that is how the British Empire did carry out the genocide of the Boers. And again, FEMA and vaccination sites is this of alarm. But anyway, guys, as I said, I am a little bit out of practice. I am kind of winging tonight's live show, and it is a little bit to sort of get me back into the routine and practice. Some of you do know I've been saying that a little bit here on Reality Decoded a lot since it did begin, but there's always been one thing or another that is sort of, every time I've got a little bit of wind in my sails, has run the good ship video productions aground. But I do have a little bit of a presentation to show you this evening. It isn't anything new. It is a re-recording and slightly re-edited version of a Soylent Green video that I put up a year ago almost, at the infancy and the dawn of the COVIDian times. And why I'm kind of putting it up again today is to kind of refresh you and just point out that, my God, we're halfway to 2022, the year that the fictional world of Soylent Green took place. And it's not necessarily looking at the Soylent Green as people. There is a spoiler alert if you haven't seen Soylent Green before. It is the society that Soylent Green is, in what the world has become, that warrants the necessity for people to line up every Tuesday to get their Soylent Green wafers. And it is a world that has been ravaged by weather, plague, famine, pestilence, such forth. And sort of beyond the movie, the story is that this has been going on for some time, that society just given up. And also, we kind of mentioned in the video you're about to see that in conjunction with Agenda 2030, how the end to inequality isn't to raise those in poverty up to the same level as the middle class. No, it's about pushing the middle class down into the poverty. When there's no middle class and everybody is equally in a state of poverty, then there is no real poverty if there's nothing above it. That is the standard class of living. So everybody would be equally poor. And again, this is Animal Farm, more equal than others. In the socialist thing, I really appreciate your support, Mark. As I said, sort of, TSP TV is a larger channel. I've got a whole bunch more subs over there than the 49 or so that we have here. And sometimes, trying to spread a message to only a handful of people, sometimes the information gets lost in the wind. And then when you add to that shadow banning, passive censorship and stuff like that, it really kind of is like knocking your head on the wall, trying to share information. And the importance, or how I feel the importance of the sharing of information now more than ever is important, is because they're trying to erase information. And they're not necessarily trying to erase information, they're erasing our desire to research and retain the information. And this is why memes and emojis and 140 characters, and why YouTube suggests that you only make videos that are 10 minutes long on one subject, which is why I go very much against the grain and talk about a whole variety of subjects and make very long videos. Take that, algorithm, in desired conformity. It's not happening here. You can jail me, you can beat me, you can even kill me, motherfuckers. I will not be what you want me to be. And that is a mantra that all of you should adopt and accept. But as I said, we're going to go back and look at a video that I did upload originally on TSP TV, and it was one of my very early attempts of editing. As once upon a time I didn't really bother with editing. I had a day job. I was often sort of 50-60 hours a week in the kitchen. TSP TV was just something I did as a little bit of fun and a hobby on my days off. Since I've been out of work for nearly a year, I figured, what, let's make this my job. Let's put a little bit more time, effort and attention into what I'm doing, seeing as I've had more time on my hands to be able to do so and time to fill. This was a little bit of a productive way to do it. So under a community strike that I received over on TSP TV a year ago for reporting on the false flag staged event shooting in Nova Scotia, hate speech apparently according to YouTube guidelines, I took it upon myself to sort of start editing, teach myself to edit in, put together sort of a little bit more of a presentation rather than just me talking blah 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 blah, ad lib for an hour or so. So what we are going to see is one of my very early attempts at editing in a Soylent Green video, but that in itself was an effort to upload in the first place. And although this is about 50 minutes long, when I did record it, it was an hour and 50 minutes long. I had to edit and self-censor, I guess, nearly an hour's worth of footage from that video in order to get it past the uploading and the processing part of YouTube. Excuse me, hiccups again, because I haven't spoken for a little while. But as I said, it was an effort to get that video uploaded in the first place, and I had to cut and change it and censor it and re-edit it in order to get a 50-minute version of the original 1 hour 50-minute version on there. So at least there was a little bit of the information available for those who chose to watch and retain it. And it was up for a little while and actually got close to a couple of hundred views, and then it was only recently, and this is what is very interesting in many ways, but we'll probably talk about that after the presentation. But it was only recently I received an email from YouTube telling me, yeah, it's against community standards. Sorry, it has been blocked in certain countries. However, my side of YouTube, I can still watch that video. So what I did today is I screen recorded it and then did a little bit of additional edits just to highlight we're a year on from when I made that video, and we're looking even more like Soylent Green than we did back then, because back then when I made it, we were only maybe 2 or 3 weeks into this COVIDian era that seems never ending, and that is here to stay. So I do have it lined up ready to go. So if or not you are ready to go, it doesn't matter because we are gonna watch it anyway. Hopefully you're ready to go. So I do need to do a couple of little things first. Turn off the camera. So if you are comfortable and in position, get your popcorn out. We do have tonight's featured presentation, Soylent Green redo. I was trying to go what they did with Apocalypse Now. You remember a little while ago, actually it's kind of longer than a little while ago, they did a rebooted anniversary version of the movie with something like 40 extra minutes of additional footage. But anyway, you haven't got 40 minutes of additional footage to watch in tonight's feature presentation, where we do go back and have a little look at the Soylent Green society and are we already living in it. So without further ado, guys, I'm shutting off my microphone and we'll be joining you in chat momentarily.
They're making our food out of people. Next thing, they'll be breeding us like cattle for food. You gotta tell them. You gotta tell them. Soylent Green is people!
They've got to tell people.
Tell them what? They're making our food out of people. Next thing, they'll be breeding us like cattle for food. You gotta tell them. You gotta tell them. Soylent Green is people!
They've got to tell people.
Tell them what?
The ocean's dying. Plankton's dying. It's people. Soylent Green is made out of people.
warm welcome to TSP TV. Now, in today's episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about the predictive programming in Soylent Green and in regards rather to where we are in today's society with the COVID-19 global pandemic. Now, for me, Soylent Green is possibly one of the most prophetic pieces of fiction I could possibly imagine, along with, the likes of 1984, They Live, The Matrix, perhaps, and in more recent times, movies like Ready Player One, and, going back into the 70s and in the 80s, there's been movies like Logan's Run and Soylent Green, which we're going to be looking at now, which kind of portrays rather a dystopian future in which maybe, due to pollution, due to pandemic, due to, disease and virus, climate change, dare I say it. How dare you, Greta Thunberg? Maybe I should put a little thing in there. I probably will. I'm just practicing with my editing now. But a little funny meme about Greta there. But anyway, the climate change, the pandemic, these are things that are very, very contemporary. These are not things from the realms of fiction, as in Soylent Green, which we're looking at in particular. Maybe we'll do some stuff on Logan's Run and the other movies I mentioned. In the future now, if you have been a follower of TSP TV for a while, you will know, of course, that I actually did have quite a lot of predictive programming and truth-related material on my channel. However, due to community strikes putting me in a code situation very, very close to termination, rather than lose my channel, I did delete a little bit of that content. Actually, a lot of that content I deleted over half of my videos. But here we are back in 2020. We're trying to do another little bit of a predictive programming video because it is so relevant with today's topics and possibly where we might be heading in the not so distant future. So at the moment, if you go out, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you're going to be seeing people that are going to be wearing face masks and gloves. Outside of grocery stores now, you see people waiting 6 feet apart or waiting in long lines to get a car in many of the supermarkets and grocery stores have limited occupancy now. You can't overfill it due to the pandemic bylaws that have been introduced wherever you may be in whatever town and city. But this is something that I can see every day in my hometown of Toronto, Canada. Something I've actually experienced myself, going to the grocery store, having to wait in line, seeing some of the grocery customers waiting with gloves on, with masks on. Not all of them, but quite a few. And again, last year, summer of 2019, it was all about little Greta Thunberg and how dare you rant about the climate change and the climate cult that she was breeding, possibly a new religion, maybe even a subject for another day, and also a subject that's already been removed from this channel, unfortunately. But we'll stay away from these things. We don't want to be getting community strikes and stuff like that if we can help it. But the climate cult, the world is on fire. We're gonna, be dying in 10 years' time, also known as a pandemic. We're going to be dead in 10 years if we don't flatten the curve, all leading into Agenda 2030. So what's Agenda 2030 going to look like when we get there? Well, from my opinion, I really believe it is going to look an awful lot like Soylent Green. Now we're building smart cities, mega cities, if you like, from the realms of Judge Dredd, 2000 AD, the comic book character. Where again, due to overpopulation in the future and pandemics and climate change, everybody's kind of been hoarded up and welded into one big, large megastructure city of billions. And I think there's 10 mega cities around the world. Nowhere else. You can't live anywhere else other than in a mega city. But are we going to start seeing the launch of smart cities here in our day and age? Quite possibly. They're already beginning here in
in Toronto. I've made a few references to these in previous videos. We've got lots of high-rise buildings, condos, you know, thumbprint, facial recognition, Alexa, Google Home, all this kind of spyware built into the walls. You know, can, hey, pour me a bath, and you'll get your bath poured, and hey, you know, brew me coffee at 7:30 in the morning. It happens, all singing, all dancing. Smart cities, but these are going to be reserved for those who can possibly afford it, or maybe people who remain as essential workers. Some people now are non-essential, and those non-essential people in the future, they might have to line up and wait for government handouts, be it Soylent Green wafers or $1,200 checks each and every month, which you have to try and live on. So we're going to start out by looking at a couple of little trailers and points from the movie Soylent Green, and then a little later on we'll be looking at some pictures and stuff and pointing out some of the similarities from the movie from 1973 to what we see on the streets today in 2020. So roll credits.
Because from today, nothing runs, nothing works.
So there's a little snippet of the original trailer for Soylent Green. It come out in 1973. Now, you know, you may notice straight off the bat they were talking about nothing running and nothing working. It's pretty much like now, unless you're an essential member of staff, pretty much most major cities around the globe are on a kind of, you know, lockdown. It's like a ghost town here in Toronto. I'm pretty sure that is the same wherever you are, as people just aren't going out. Stores, businesses, everything is closed up, a little bit like they were saying there in the trailer. Now, you know, it was set at the time of making, it was set 50 years in the future, and it was set in 2022. Now, Soylent Green was, as I said, produced in 1973 by Richard Fletcher. I can't say that name, I'm sorry. But anyway, he was the director. John Heston starred in it alongside a couple of other Chuck Connors. Yeah, I think it was Chuck Connors, and I was thinking of Chuck Norris for a second. But yeah, there's a few 70s celebrities and stars in there. Most of all, Charlton Heston was the lead role, and of course his end scene, and Soylent Green was up there with the end scene in Planet of the Apes. You know, damn you, you did it to yourselves, you maniacs. When he found out it was Earth in Soylent Green at the end of the movie, he finds out that Soylent Green is in fact people. The Soylent Green is, of course, in the movie realms. It's a food substance made from ocean-based plankton. That's what they claim. That's what the company who makes Soylent Green claim that it is a plankton rich in protein that is harvested from the oceans. Now, something also we have at the moment in today's society, good old Greta Thunberg again, the vegans and their Beyond Meat products, you know, beyond meatballs, beyond burgers, beyond Kentucky Fried Chicken, all this soya-based Franken foods is kind of made in a factory to resemble meat as closely and as much as possible. Now, Soylent Green actually comes in the fiction. The company name comes from soya and lentils, which were two things that, you know, were put together, vegetable ingredients or vegetarian ingredients that were put together to create the name Soylent, and that's what they did. Were making health-based food substitutes due to the fact that there was a shortage of food within Soylent Green. Now, again, there isn't exactly a shortage of food at the moment, but we have seen shortages on things like toilet paper, hand sanitizer, soap, stuff like this, personal hygiene products. But most importantly, toilet paper was the first thing that became a commodity of luxury, and you can find for love and money for a few weeks until they restock. Now, we're already seeing around the world at the moment that farmers are indeed dumping their milk, they're throwing away their harvests and crops, potatoes, eggplants, zucchinis, all these things I've seen on my social media feed. Some of you may have also seen similar news articles on your news feeds about such goings on with food and farm companies and dumping crops in stuff like this because of the supply chain. Now, if not we've got essential workers. Why is the supply chain being affected? I don't know. Maybe that's another topic for another day. But back to Soylent Green, there's not a lot of food. There is a scarcity of living spaces. Most people have kind of left rural areas and gone and populated the cities because that's where aid and help was being offered to people suffering from all the other radiation, fallout, pandemics, viruses, stuff that's going on in the world in realms of Soylent Green. So each and every Tuesday, the government lines up and they hand out Soylent Green to each and every member of society. Now, we've already seen in the United States and in North America, National Guard and volunteer or non-profit organizations handing out food parcels to people. Car lots were, turned into to kind of socialist drive-through bread line type things where cars lined up and they were given boxes of essential items. And again, who deems what is essential in this situation? Certainly not the individual. And they say beggars can't be choosers. Although the choice to beg is a choice in itself, and beggars can also choose where they beg, for how long they beg, in what they spend their money on, the money they resort. These are choices, so don't let anyone tell you that beggars can't be choices. Beggars may have limited choices, but they have choices nonetheless. But anyway, the society in Soylent Green has to line up. They have to wait in line for their food parcels. We will look at some photographs in this in a little bit future, and a little bit further on in this episode. But as we've seen at the first hand, a little glimpse of what's happened, people lining up outside the stores in Soylent Green. When they come out, they didn't get enough food, and riots and stuff like this do occur quite frequently throughout the movie, due to the fact there isn't enough food. People are in hard times, and tensions are high, and they also have population control or crowd dispersals. But the Soylent Green, because of how society has become, they're also euthanasia centers. So there's this is where the food and the drug ministry kind of work hand in hand. Very, very cryptic stuff going on here in Soylent Green, because we have on one side of the spectrum, we have the health industry, which offer assisted euthanasia, where if you're very, very tired of living and struggling in society that is polluted, famine, almost disease spread, then you can go to one of these health-run private enterprises, I guess, private facilities where you can go sign up, pay a few bucks, and they will dignified and safely and dignifiedly put you to sleep like a dog or a cat, basically. But then that's not where the story ends, because once you've been euthanized, they don't dispose you, they don't cremate you, they don't bury you in the ground. No. What they do is they have the health administration, they hand over to the food administration, and basically the corpses become the source of protein, which they mix up, blend up into kind of a paste, and then pass it off as Soylent Green, the ocean-based plankton protein. And as I said, in this day and age, we do have Beyond Meat. Is Beyond Meat Soylent Green? I don't know. I can't suggest that they will say for actual fact that there is humans in Beyond Meat product, but it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if they did. So let's get back to another little clip for you, and we'll see you afterwards.
Making our food out of people. Next thing they'll be breeding us like cattle for food. You gotta tell them. You gotta tell them. Promise, Tiger, I promise. I'll tell next say. You tell everybody. Listen to me, Hatcher. You gotta tell them. Soylent Green is people! Guess from nothing runs. Nothing works. The people, I say. And people will
had the climatic ending to Soylent Green, where Charlton Heston, after doing some investigation, gets into the Soylent Green processing plant and finds out that the bodies from the euthanasia clinic. We will be watching the euthanasia scene very, very shortly, but the bodies from the euthanasia scene then get loaded onto trucks and carts and end up at the Soylent Green factory, where the bodies are then processed into the fancy little green wafer cracker type things that they then distribute to the population. Now, you've seen in also the opening little title that we saw here, sequence that we saw here, that people were waiting in line outside and they were being distributed food by what looked like government officials. I mean, they could also be United Nations officials, although it did look like they were the law enforcement and police force of the time in Soylent Green. And remember, it is set in the 2022, which is just 2 years from now, not very far away at all. And what also isn't very far away is 2030. Now, the United Nations, the Unified Nancies, as I like to call them, or Nazis. I don't know how I got a bit of a regional dialect. It's a difficult word to say because I can't pronounce my T's. But anyway, the United Nations, back in the 90s, they had something, they come up with a plan called Agenda 21, which has now been transformed into Agenda 2030. Now, and originally, and still is, its incentive is for sustainable development, where they want to end hunger and poverty. But really and truly what it is a depopulation agenda that we will be looking into momentarily, but that is what their plan is, to try and depopulate the world in order to have a sustainable environment for both wildlife, plant and vegetation, and humanity living in stability with the planet, so to speak. And this is where little Greta Thunberg comes into it with her climate cult, brainwashing the masses of the young generation seem to follow her. She's like the Pied Piper, and they are the mindless, brainless, MK Ultra'd zombies that they lack independent thought. They are a generation that has been brought up by smart technology, be it a phone or a tablet. Most kids these days have one at a very young age, and sometimes these tablets and devices which contain artificial intelligence become babysitters and sometimes kindergarten teachers, and teach at a very, very young age undeveloped minds with a little bit of mind control in brainwashing implantations and the lack of independent thoughts. These guys are following around, they're all young people, but by the time Agenda 2030 comes around, they're going to be adults. They're probably going to be maybe homeowners, they may have jobs, educations, who knows. They might well be part of the essential workforce. They might be part of the non-essential workforce. They might be lining up for their Soylent Green every Tuesday, or they might be, in the fancy luxury apartments that are all singing, all dancing, bells and whistles, Alexa built into the wall. But they're going to be the voters, and they're going to be the adults that will accept this change. They've been brainwashed at a young, just like the National Socialists in Germany used the Hitler Youth as an organization to spread propaganda and to control the minds, the undeveloped minds, I hasten to add, of the young in order to accept their ideology, just like the climate cult being brainwashed and used as a propaganda tool. You can't really kind of criticize kids and stuff. Oh, they're kids, bless them, women and children are kind of off limits, but they're young children, and they're having their minds molded and created for the society that we're heading towards under the Agenda 2030 guidelines, all about environmental health. This is why the climate cult will possibly become some kind of new religion. The climatists. A little bit like a new Catholic church, but in the guise of all things earthly. And little Saint Greta will probably become the Mother Teresa of that religion. But we digress. Back to Soylent Green. So as we see in the movie, they are very, very, poverty-stricken. Nobody has anything. They're getting government handouts from what could possibly be the United Nations or law enforcement or a government agency, maybe even FEMA. these organizations are all part and parcel and have their part to play in Agenda 2030, and we already see now that the United States is under FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency guidelines. They handed over the presidency to FEMA, I think, on March the 13th. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was last month that the United Nations, not the United Nations, the Federal Emergency Management Agency took control of the United States. And it has always believed in the New World Order agenda that in order to kind of remove what laws and regulations and constitution and Bill of Rights, freedoms and liberties humanity has, they're going to have to create some kind of global pandemic or global crisis, rather. That could be a pandemic, it could possibly be some kind of crisis for outer space. But where we seen on 9/11, we had the Islamic terrorists that were used as the Lee Harvey Oswald in that particular psychological operation. We had a war on terror, and Islam was to be feared. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, these were the phantom menaces that we used to keep us in order, and was also used as the reason to implement radical amendments to the Constitution, the unpatriotic Patriot Act for one, spy on your neighbors, see something, say something, that kind of type of mentality. And that's where we are today with the pandemic. We have see something, say something. If your neighbor isn't abiding by the government regulations or bylaws, that you can only go out for 1 hour a day for exercise, and even then the reasons that you go out are very, very limited, you know, to run, to jog, to go and get essential groceries or medication, walking your dog perhaps, but other than that, you know, you're very, very limited in what you can do, certainly in the United Kingdom. And we also have curfews and quarantines and shelter-in-place orders issued here in North America. In Canada here, we are under a state of emergency in Ontario and Toronto, where I live, and pretty much everything, you know, is locked up. It's like a ghost town. Or a few essential stores open, but a lot of other places aren't open, and a lot of people are out of work. A lot of people are struggling, and already people are receiving government assistance. But there are a lot of folks now, it's nearly sort of 2 months into this, a month and a half perhaps into this global pandemic, and now people that weren't necessarily prepared for this situation are finding they are running out of food. And we've already seen some kind of socialist style lineups in grocery stores, in non-profit organizations, in and National Guard type places, where they've been distributing food parcels and food boxes to civilians because they don't have anything. And that's what we see in Soylent Green here. We see people lining up. Every Tuesday is Soylent Green Day. Those that don't have anything, every Tuesday they have to go up, wait in line, and get a scoop of Soylent Green. And as you also saw in the marketplace, in the trailer scene that we did see, there's other sort of independent retailers there trying to sort of make a buck or two for themselves by also selling off, you know, other food items that are very, very expensive. And this is something that we're seeing today. Food prices are suddenly becoming a little bit more higher. People are already mentioning that things that they, you know, were like, you know, basic everyday necessities are almost becoming a luxury. Prices of cheese and things, yet we see big dairy factories dumping gallons and gallons and gallons of milk in the tens of thousands. Why? I don't know. Are they generating and creating a food shortage? Possibly they are. Last year in 2019, we had some very, very strange weather events. We're also having some strange weather events right now that cause some pretty bad damage to crops, livestock, and other such things that does end up, you know, part of the food industry, be it, you know, for food for livestock or food for human consumption. This stuff is going to be in shortage, and we have already seen the toilet paper shortage, and maybe that was a little bit of planning and dummy run. They used an item that wasn't necessarily going to kill or cause too much discomfort if you run out of it. I mean, you can always use a sock or a piece of newspaper if you need to, but you can't, you know, you can't eat a sock if you've got no food. So are they using that as a little bit of a practice run to get used to people running out of items? And are we going to start seeing food being scarce once again on the shelves like it was in the early days of the pandemic, where everyone went out and panic shopped and started becoming preppers overnight? But Soylent Green Society, they don't have anything. They have to, the majority of folks don't have anything, and there is a very small population, small amount of people that live in relative luxury. I'm guessing this is the wealthy and the elites that are depicted in there, and people that are, own chairmans, vice principals, what all these kind of, CEO type little, acronym things that they have. Industry types, you know what I'm saying? Sorry, I got a little bit lost in my train of thought there, but the people, the haves and the have-nots, and the haves have an awful lot, whereas the have-nots don't have fuck all, except for their little bag of Soylent Green, which is made of human parts. Now, as I said, at the moment in 20th century, 21st century, right, modern world, people are lining up in the streets outside grocery stores. They're wearing masks, they're wearing gloves, they're being told that they're only limited certain amount of items per customer. So, you may be only be able to get 2 packets of toilet paper, you might only be able to get 2 cartons of milk, 2 cases of eggs, things like this. We're already seeing kind of that regulated kind of consumerism, as well as having to wait outside in line in order to go in. And we will also see in many places now that are no longer accepting cash because they feel that cash is part of how the virus is transmitted from person to person. Whether or not you believe it is up to you. But back once again, we see the people in sort of with nothing. We see that there's a large corporation that is involved. We see the Food and Drug Administration representative that are kind of hand in glove. The health people are euthanizing people because it's such an unpleasant living conditions anymore, and the food industry is profiting off of what would otherwise be waste or compost, so profits to be had on both. They're profiting on the suffering of the people that can't live in a society, and they're also profiting from the people living in the society. Both hands are feeding the same mouth, so to speak. So are we going to start seeing that in the future? Are we going to see, a society that due to this pandemic, we're going to have to live under strict quarantine restrictions? We're only going to be allowed a certain amount of items at the groceries for those that are essential and have wealth. For those that don't have wealth, are we going to have to wait in line every Tuesday for our government handouts, be it a token gesture of cash or a box of Soylent Green or Beyond Meat products? And this is where the vegetarianism comes into it. And again, little vegan, little Greta Thunberg, she's a vegan as well, in the vegan agenda, the climate cult, all hand in glove, mold in the minds. And we're seeing, that possibly livestock is going to be in short supply. Meat is becoming also pretty expensive right now at the groceries. And in Soylent Green, Charlton Heston brings home a very small piece of beef for his friend Saul, and they haven't tasted it in years and years and years and years, and it's only a very tiny piece. But are we going to start seeing meat become short supply, and are we going to be forced into purchasing these kind of Beyond Meat substitute products? And is this what the minds of the climate cult will be in mind in order to accept once it becomes a norm? It won't be, it will kind of be filling into their little kind of climate cultist utopia. Hey, everyone's a vegan now. But many of us might not want to be vegan or have the choice. And again, the Beyond Meat Corporation, they're a huge part of the Food and Drug Administration. And there is reason to believe, or rumors to believe, that possibly they're using the HEK293, which is human embryonic kidney tissue, which is used as a form of food coloring as well as in some medicines, and I believe cancer research. But HEK, human embryonic kidney 293, is a substance you should look at. I'll put a little picture here for you so you can just see for yourself. Interesting stuff. Is the HEK290 in the Beyond Burger, is this the Soylent Green of today's society? Are we inadvertently becoming cannibals? Are we inadvertently being forced into eating plant-based diets, just like the society in Soylent Green? That's all they have to eat is Soylent Green, Soylent Red, and Soylent Yellow. As I said, it's been handed out to them by the government. Are we going to see in a year or two, if this pandemic doesn't go away, if we have, the Pandemic Act, and there's going to be levels of pandemic level orange, pandemic level red, pandemic level green? No, there's no pathogens in the air. We've got a code green. You can go outside. Oh no, it's a code orange, pandemic alert. You're going to have to, self-isolate. You're going to have to social distance, and we will be distributing your Soylent Green every Tuesday. Don't worry about that, folks. We'll keep you fed while you're under self-isolation. And God only knows what happens if it gets to a code red. Are we going to start have decontamination camps? Are we going to have euthanasia clinics to get rid of those that are infected, that don't want to suffer? So anyway, we're going to look at another little scene now before I ramble on too much, that also is a little bit relevant with today's society in regards to the social, self-isolation and social distance. And people now have only allowed to be out for 1 hour a day. Some people are under curfew. They're not allowed out after a certain time. People are in shelter in place. But we're going to show you this little scene now from Soylent Green, which is, again, the opening segment. Pay very close attention to the announcement being made over the public address system, and we'll see you once the clip. First stage removal. First stage removal. Streets prohibited in 1 hour. Streets prohibited in 1 hour. That was the message they just said in the opening, first lines of the movie. In fact, Soylent Green are streets prohibited. Streets prohibited. That's just what our streets right now are. They're prohibited. You're not allowed out in certain parts unless it is for essential purposes, or you are an essential employee. Other than that, you are left in a shelter in place, stay at home, self-isolation, enforced quarantine. So is this whole pandemic agenda 2030, is this a stepping stone towards socialism and socialist society that we will live in under the one world government? And already we've seen people waiting in bread lines, very similar to what we used to see in Soviet Russia in the 1980s during the Cold War. Though people aren't exactly waiting in bread lines, but they are waiting in grocery stores in order to get things like bread, which are only available in limited amounts. We're also seeing the government, both in the United States, in Canada, and also in Europe and elsewhere around the world, giving hands out. Part of the pandemic stimulus, they're giving handout in pandemic payments to individuals who have been put out of work as a result of it, to the tune of $1,200 United States. Not sure what it is in Canada. I think it's $1,700 perhaps. But is this us getting ready to a little bit towards the socialist society that the one world government will present to us? And we've also got little things going on now, like in my neighborhood every day at 7:30 everybody comes out and bangs pots and pans and claps. For the health workers in the United Kingdom at 8 o'clock, everybody stands on their doorstep and claps the NHS. And the NHS is the National Health Service, a government organization, I guess. So is this getting used to people, programming them, socially engineering them, getting them ready to stand out and show appreciation to their masters, their saviors, the sort of people that are giving them the handout? And another little thing I've noticed, and that we might have to do another video of in the coming days, is Stockholm Syndrome. I believe many people are beginning to get a little bit of Stockholm Syndrome since they've been in self-isolation and are beginning to sympathize with their captors, in this case the elites and the governments that are forcing them to obey their demands to stay at home, socially isolate, wash your hands every 20 minutes, all the stuff that we're being brainwashed and manipulated and social engineered with, I believe. My opinion, not telling you that's what you should believe, but up to you to think and choose what thoughts and opinions you believe and choose as true or not. But this is what I believe was happening. We're getting used to it being programmed. This is part of a social engineer, and this is a little bit of an introduction, a dummy run. Let's get people a little bit ready for it, so when it happens again, oh, it's just like the pandemic. Remember when we were lining up for toilet paper in 2020? Oh, seems a lifetime ago. Yeah, no, it's only 2023. But this is my beliefs. But anyway, Soylent Green, as I said, is possibly one of the most prophetic pieces of science fiction you could possibly imagine. You know, we all know about George Orwell's 1984. Everyone talks about it being an Orwellian dystopia already. But I believe the Orwellian dystopia that was introduced after the events of 9/11, here we are 20 years later, we're getting another global staged event, I believe, in the scam pandemic COVID-19 virus. But I believe in the aftermath of this, we're going to see some kind of pandemic act. We're going to see the introduction and slowly and surely the totalitarian, socialist, one world government ways will become that much part of normal society. We'll just get used to it. It will be a gradual slide into 2030 now, and each and every day as we speak now, it seems that more civil liberties, freedoms, and laws are removed from our society, and more totalitarian measures seem to be made. People being fined for not social distancing, people even being imprisoned and arrested for not social distancing. We have a good friend back home in the United Kingdom who was arrested for not complying with the bylaws of social distancing in my hometown of Swindon. So that's what the state of play is at the moment. As I said, we're not as desolate as the Soylent Green movie, but it is 2 years away. We've got 2 years to get there, and we're already seeing a few signs of these Soylent Green-like similes happening in reality. The fiction prepares us for the truth or the reality or the future, whichever you like about it. You know, predictive program is something we are in the truth community very, very aware of, something I'm very, very aware of, and as a little bit of a geek, I have a sort of extra sensitive eye to such things. Spent a lot of time watching all these science fiction movies and TV shows, comic books and books. That was my lifetime once upon a time growing up, and why I have kind of such, as I said, an accurate connoisseur's guide for the predictive programming. And certainly Soylent Green is possibly a movie I've mentioned more than 1984 on this channel, and prior to my community strikes, I think I had 3 or 4 videos about Soylent Green. I even had one saying, are we heading towards a Soylent Green society, when the Beyond Beef buzz was happening last summer. But Soylent Green, as I said, we're going to have a little look at some pictures now that might be very reminiscent to what we're seeing now, or maybe what's reminiscent of to come, and then we will be slowly and surely wrapping this video up in a not so distant future. So here we have an opening photograph, and this is kind of a little picture of how people live in the conditions or in the environment of the movie Soylent Green, and they're living out of cars and in shanty towns, what looks like tarp tents here. Kind of zoom in there, you see the tents and the cars, and this is like shanty town. This is pretty much the living conditions for most of the folk there, and here we can see them lining up, waiting to get their water. A little bit similar to what we saw a few moments ago, lining up outside of the grocery stores in today's society. But there they are, all waiting for their water there, line their soul. This guy here, he's one of the main characters. He's the one that commits suicide or goes to the euthanasia clinic. There's these trucks here. These are what are used for crowd dispersal. And what happens is when too many people get together, they send these trucks in and they scoop them up. We'll see a picture in a little while, and toss them in the back. Now, something we have at the moment is, we're not again social gatherings. They're things that are now prohibited. You can't gather with more than 5 people in today's society, and we've already seen people be arrested, fined, and dispersed, although not yet with dump trucks with scoops lifting people up and tossing them into the back as of yet, but give it time. We are only in the early stages of this, and we do still got another 2 years before we reach 2022 when this future was depicted in Soylent Green, and here we are. There they are, being scooped up and tossed into the back for social gatherings. Far too many people in one place. Although this was used to break up a riot in the movie. There was a scene when they run out of Soylent Green, and the people that have been waiting patiently, probably for days, to get their little bag of Soylent Green, were left unhappy, so they got a little bit civil unrest, and civil unrest is one of those things that can lead to martial law and see military on the streets. Now here we can kind of see the guys in their helmets, their fancy little cop helmets, look a little bit like American football helmets that someone stuck a peak on, but you can see a guy here in the foreground. He's got his mask on. Just like today, people have masks on, and there's the crowd, large crowd, social gathering look, waiting for their Soylent Green. Here are some of the marketplaces that we mentioned earlier, where individuals are trying to sell a little bit of what they can. Here's a lady being removed for social disturbance. She was unhappy she didn't get enough Soylent Green. She started to complain, and the authorities here are dragging off an elderly lady, and there's been some things we've heard reports of at the moment. People being arrested for not complying with social distancing, and even elderly people, although I can't think of a reference at the moment. There they are again, waiting to go into the store, which is an essential store selling essential items at a very, very high cost price. And each and every week the price of Soylent Green goes up. What you could buy 1 week for $1, you can't buy the same amount the following week. And there you go, there's some more folks being tossed into the truck. It's one of the individuals in the crowd. There they are again, waiting outside. You can see some masks in the crowd there. And again, here's some masks of the people outside, a guy waiting outside the store with his bullhorn, giving commands. Now, there is a guy, there's lots of security guards, but there's a guy outside my local No Frills, making sure that the store doesn't get overcrowded, and making sure everybody waits in line patiently and doesn't get too disruptive. Now, he doesn't have a bullhorn yet, but give it time, and he's not alone. He's one of many security guards that now stand outside outside of supermarkets and grocery stores, allowing people in one at a time. It's a little bit like nightclubs when you used to line up outside all night waiting to get inside. And there again, masks of the faces in the crowd, looking very distraught and distressed, and decrepit a little bit, but that's something that we see a lot of now. People walking around every single day in masks and gloves. More masks, more police. Nice afro there, look. 1973, sign of the times, but as you can see, masks. And that's all of them, guys. So as I said, some scary images from the movie there that are not too unfamiliar to what we're seeing right now on the streets around the globe, in various cities, towns, villages, and whatnot. Although we haven't seen the dump trucks yet, but people have been, or law enforcement has been out to disperse people for social. guys, so there were some interesting photos for you, I hope, and we also threw in a little bit, we kind of edited and cut that down a little bit of the Saul, the secondary character in the movie, a living encyclopedia who reminisces and longs for the old days where you could have pencils and you could have food that you actually enjoyed eating. But anyway, that was his euthanasia scene where he went to the euthanasia clinic, signed up, and wanted to get his full 20 minutes of enjoyment before he did croak. And you may have noticed that a few folks that were waiting in the lineup to get euthanized also had masks on, probably a little bit late in the day for the mask, really, if you're just waiting up to get your lethal injection. But they give him a nice send-off. You get your favorite music, your favorite colors, nice little drink, get into a comfy bed, and seconds after you check out, they put you in a body bag and send you off to the Soylent Green factory. So as I said, guys, there are some images there that aren't too unfamiliar, or dissimilar rather, to ones we are seeing now in today's society, with the pandemic, with the social distancing, with the essential personnel, or employees, with the non-essentials being left at home, being told what to do by the government. If you are an essential, you do have a little bit of freedom and ability to go out and do your job, and maybe see a little bit of activity outside of your home. But lots of guys and girls and boys and girls, sorry, I don't know why I said that twice, but lots of folks are at home now due to the pandemic. Lots of folks are out of work due to the pandemic, and many people are also struggling financially and maybe nutritionally as a result of the pandemic, because they haven't got any money. They have to pay their their utility bills, they have to pay their rent. Food is becoming a luxury, just like it is in Soylent Green. So as I said, guys, it is a movie that I consider to be extremely prophetic. It's a movie I've mentioned and also made several videos in the past about, although they are no longer available to see, which is kind of why I made this one, to give you a little bit of a refresher, and it almost seems so much more relevant in today's times than it did a year ago when I first started making predictive programming videos, before I did take them down to avoid my channel getting terminated as a result of community strikes. But anyway, guys, this has been a long video for you on Soylent Green and the predictive programming and the society in which we live in today. And are we going to be looking a lot more like Soylent Green by the time 2022 comes around, or are we going to flatten the curve and get out of this pandemic sooner than then? So anyway, guys, as I said, thank you very much for watching. This is TSP TV. This was a shit video production. It was a pretty fancy edited, pimped up episode for you to enjoy this day. So not only let me know what you think of what I had to say about Soylent Green, but give me a little comment and thought on what you think of the edits in this video. And if you like it, then this might be something you're seeing a lot more of. So thanks for watching, guys. As I said, shit video production for TSP TV. We will see you in the next one. And until then, keep it thrifty. And remember, be excellent to each other.
So welcome back, guys. We are now once again live in the thrift store studio, and there I am in glorious black and white. So hopefully you guys did enjoy that. There were some very interesting comments and some good dialogue going on in the chat, so thank you for those who did contribute to that. And just want to highlight once again that I uploaded that nearly 12 months ago. I think if you heard in there, we mentioned it was around early April time. We mentioned about March 13th being a couple of weeks ago at time of recording that. And here we are 12 months on, no closer to getting out of these lockdown conditions, and beginning to see more and more evidence of the scenes very similar to what we see in Soylent Green, of people waiting outside of stores wearing masks. Glad you mentioned that, Mark, because for those of you who don't know who Mark is, actually, he's somebody I got chatting to from Prepper Chicks, and good old Annie Burdell, our dear and beloved friend of the Thrift Fam community, Reality Decoded as it is now known. And Mark is good people, he's from good stock, and that's how he got spoken to. But she sent me a little something the other day with regards to plant-based psychedelics, and this is something I did want to add to the fact 12 months later, Beyond Meat products seem to be in rampant supply. They're on the demand. KFC, Taco Bell, Subway, vegan Kit Kats now beyond, I don't know why, but I guess because of the chocolate, but we have plant-based Kit Kats. Everything is going plant-based. Is this containing the HEK293? The effects of adrenochrome and cannibalism is something you need to remind me about in case I forget. We will get to very, very, very shortly. But psychedelic plants, mushrooms, peyote, for example, and I can't remember what the one, it begins with an A, but Annie sent me a little link about a guy who took some psychedelic stuff similar to something in the movie Avatar. And kind of a little bit like the sort of healing spiritual properties of taking LSD or acid. You know, many kind of spiritual shamans will kind of have ceremonies and sort of processes where they take these psychedelics. But peyote and magic mushrooms are plant-based. They're plant-based psychedelics. Going back to MK Ultra Monarch programming, how they brainwashed and mind controlled their candidates was by using a series of repetition trigger words combined with psychedelic drugs, acid and methamphetamine being one. So they couldn't sleep, and while they couldn't sleep, they were tripping their balls off. And LSD in particular was also used by the CIA in order to extract information. And the CIA used to hire prostitutes in influential areas of DC, for example, that would entertain some of these high-ranking politicians and government officials, and under the influence of LSD, they would then give up some of their deepest secrets to these hookers, who would then tell the boys at the CIA in order for a pardon and maybe like the removal of some charges against them. That's the one. I can't even pronounce it. It's a hard word to say, but what Trip is saying. Now, that is another thing that I believe is being used in these plant-based products. So if you can see and join the dots of where I'm going, are these plant-based foods not only maybe hiding human-based protein sources, should we say, as well as providing psychedelic drugs that will support our mind control. And along with Soylent Green, something else I have mentioned an awful lot is MK Ultra Monarch programming in particular, and the fact that we have artificially intelligent handlers that we carry around in our surveillance, monitoring, advanced research technology devices. That is the acronym of SMART, for those of you who don't know, who have forgotten from the previous times I've mentioned. And once again, SMART is the acronym for surveillance, monitoring, advanced research technology, and they contain an artificially intelligent robot. Essentially, that's why they call them androids, that receives all of our data and then uses that against us. So while we're eating our plant-based burgers and maybe getting a little bit of a psychedelic kick in a minuscule amount that might sort of warp our mind, and we're sat glued to our social media feeds, as many people are under the captivity of the lockdown measures, some of those that have complied to the line and to the rule, stayed at home, socially isolated, not seeing friends, family, and are solely getting their outside world information from their social media feeds. Are these people being programmed? Something we mentioned in the Manchurian Karen's video is certain social media platforms programming Manchurian candidates to act in a certain way and have these Karens that are acting and getting angry when they see people without masks in Walmart and Target? Are they the result of monarch programming transmitted to them via their social media feeds? And maybe, you know, some of these Karens might be inclined to be a bit of a virtual signaling vegan and be all up in the Beyond Meat bandwagon. So you see what I'm saying about this plant-based shit, that they can also implement psychedelics to us, which is a form of brainwashing and mind control methodology. And back to the adrenochrome, which is the drug that is kind of simulated from the eating of human flesh. That is part of cannibalism. It becomes very, very addictive because of the adrenochrome. Now, many of you may not be unaware of this, being in North America, and if not, the news of foot and mouth disease transported from the United Kingdom, where I am originally from and where I was living at the time. But back in the 1990s, we had a foot and mouth epidemic, BSE, which I can't remember what BSE stands for now, but it was a disease that affected cattle. And how it affected cattle was somehow beef byproduct had got put into the feed that they give to cows to eat to supplement their diet when they are livestock. All the GMOs and all that kind of shit that put into meat today is what gets put into this meal, and somehow beef byproduct got contained within this feed for the cows, and inadvertently these cows then developed cannibalism. Now, what kind of stops our body digesting ourselves is the fact that we don't eat ourselves. What we kind of put into our body learns to digest, and many things the human body can't digest, like sweet corn, for example. We eat it, but we've all took a dumb path to the barbecue and seen there as a sweet corn is exactly as it went in, coming out the same. But we can't digest everything. But if we continue to eat human meat and human products on a regular basis, the body has to work exceptionally hard to digest it. And when we do not consume human meat, the body cannot differentiate whether we've eaten human meat or whether our human meat that is us is what we have eaten, and we slowly start to digest ourselves, and we start with the brain. And this is what happened to the poor cows. Their brains started to digest, which is why they started tripping around and falling all over themselves. So over a prolonged period of time of maybe subjecting yourself inadvertently to human byproducts, it may or may not, let's not say, you know, I've got no actual fact, we're just surmising the possibility, not saying that it is a probability. Again, make of it what you will. These are just thoughts and opinions. But over a prolonged time of being subjected to cannibalism, you will inadvertently start to digest your brain, and therefore suddenly start to dumb down. The dumbing down of society is something we all have heard, and is all how, you know, the dumbing down is how really and truly today's society is accepting a lot of the information that is being given to the masses via social media. Exactly, it was a drill. It was an experimentation to see what would happen to livestock if they were fed themselves. And once they had the data and research, they're like, okay, how can we then implement this into humans? And you know that they always start out with test lab rats and lab monkeys, and in this case it was lab cows, but they weren't in the lab, they were actually in the fields on the farm. So give a real-time, real life, you know, experimentation survey result data for them to then go away and analyze and see how can we implement this into human form. And is the Beyond Meat the Soylent Green of today's reality, from the fiction? Is it how they are doing it? Is this how they are making folks a little bit I heard, yeah, that there's been quite a few rumors on the McDonald's human meat glittiness, and the fact that they changed the name of the company they get their beef from to 100% beef, so they can legally and legitimately say we use 100% beef in our products. I like Italian but not an Italian. Yeah, exactly. You know, maybe if you were a Chinese person, would you need to eat one in an hour's time? And if you know, maybe an Indian person, would you sort of have an icky stomach the next day? I don't know. I'm Sicilian, but don't like Siciliano. I get you. Are you really, Mark? I guess you would. Mark Antony, one of the Roman emperors, I believe. I get sick when I eat a burger there. Really, quite a few people I do. And I used to be once quite partial to a couple of McDoubles now and then in the value meal, but you know, it is garbage, and I haven't eaten it in quite some time. Okay, Mark, no worries, just wondering there. But there's an awful lot about you know, adrenochrome become a little bit of a buzzword over the last 12 months while people have been locked down. And you know, if or not you buy into the QAnon um, theory or not, then we're led to believe that the elites like to steal children, keep them in underground bunkers, and then sort of ritualistically sacrifice them at their big shindigs in hoo-has out at Bohemian Grove, and maybe at the Skull and Bones headquarters at Yale or Harvard. I can't remember which of the two. I think it's Harvard. That Skull and Bones is situated on, and this is what the elites like to eat. And you know, people like Lady Gaga and Madonna, I think, have been seen at these what do they call it? Blood sacrifice. They have a name for these things. And what's that girl's name? She's some descendant of Crowley. I can't remember. Abramovich. That person. She's a big into the spiritual cooking. Is that what it is, where they kind of make and feast on blood, semen, in human parts? Spirit cooking. There you go. Thank you, Baby P. And that become very, very you know, kind of prominent, and over the last years, you know, we were told to trust the plan. I'm not sure if we should still be trusting the plan, if there ever was a plan to trust. But, you know, that was something that become a little bit common knowledge. And for a while, it was all up and everywhere over the social media news feeds. Adrenochrome this, adrenochrome that. Now, as I said, you know, the results of cannibalism are kind of addictive, very similar to that of taking alcohol or drugs. And you become a little bit dependent on it, and when you don't get it, you become sick, and then when you don't eat it, you start to digest yourself. So, you know, what better way to sort of maybe lobotomize people, so to speak, than sort of giving them their own sort of device to lobotomize themselves, with kind of hiding it in the small print or disguising it as food additives or food flavorings, as is the case with HEK293, which may or may not be a myth or one of those things to debunk, or part of the controlled opposition. But nevertheless, guys, we are getting around to the 2-hour mark. So I will try to wrap it up a little bit by then, unless, of course, we do get our obligatory gusset girls at the as we always seem to do, as we do tend to wrap these up. But I did want to get back into action and back a little bit in the swing of things and try and get my groove on a little bit. Sorry if I've been a little bit more discombobulated than normal. I am been a little bit sort of on a mental battle the last few months, and suffering with a few personal difficulties that I won't bore you with. But you know, nonetheless, guys, all of us are still 1 year being affected by COVID-19 one way or another. As I said, I've been out of work for nearly a year. Not looking like any time in the near future that there will be jobs available. Part of you know, all this open Ontario shit that they've got here is the government have kind of offered a surplus and you know, to small businesses, and we'll help you out. You know what, you know, to get you back on your feet, we will pay 75% of your payroll. So now every little small business has to run its payroll through the books and through the government in terms to receive the subsidies and a supplement to pay the staff's wages. However, if this is like a loan, it's not like sort of, you know, a handout or a benefit, it's like a sort of crisis loan. If those businesses are then unable to repay those loan payments, their business becomes the property of the government. So we are looking like we're getting very militarized. You know, the kind of police in Soylent Green didn't really look like sort of regular police. They didn't exactly look like militarized police either, but they looked as though they were a little bit more militarized than the regular police force. You know, how long is it going to be before we are regulated at the streets, you know, at the supermarkets, and going out on the street? Is they going to sort of, okay, people whose last name begins with A to M, they can go out on Mondays but not Tuesdays, and people that are M to Z, they can go out on Tuesdays? You know what I mean? Is it going to get to the point where we have to have sort of vaccines where we've got to like wear masks full time? How much more of this are they going to implement to the PSYOP to get us to where Soylent Green is in 1 year's time, 2022? There is a reason we are all here. Somehow, as I think you mentioned earlier, that the force sort of brings who needs to be brought together at a time to bring them together. You know, I'm not a religious person. I am an atheist. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute any of you become atheists, give up your particular religion or belief system or faith. That is important to you. Keep it, hold it, embrace it even more right now. But I do believe in some kind of force, I guess, for want of not understanding or believing in anything else enough to buy into that kind of thing. But the force does bring those together, and those that it's brought together here under the Ship Video Productions umbrella. I've tried to sort of inform or provide information. I'm not here to brainwash you or dictate to you necessarily, or be a prophet or anything like that. No social influencer intentions or delusions at all. It is just trying to sort of pass on some information that I've obtained that found interest, that may be of interest to you. And if or not you choose to make of it what you will, that is your choice. If you want to share it with your friends, I'd rather see you guys go away and start posting stuff that I've spoken about that you found out for yourself. That would be wonderful, because this keeps the message going, and information now than ever is more important. Now again, you know, Soylent Green isn't exactly groundbreaking news. We didn't have any revelations and exclusives. Here it is. Here's the proof that Beyond Meat is people. We are just looking at the comparisons of fiction and how startlingly comparison they are to real life, in all the things that we're hearing in real life in regards to Beyond Meat. What we're seeing on the streets under the guidelines of lockdown conditions are very, very, very similar. I think you will agree. And you know, the educational and information purpose in the sharing of information is what the sort of internet was all about, and that is what I'm trying to use the internet for. So it is always very, very appreciated when new people do come along, as yourself, Mark, and thank you again for bringing a few newbies to Reality Decoded and the Thrift Store Studio. I'm not sure if or not they stuck around. Hoopties was here. I know we did see Darcy leave a little bit early to get herself off to bed, but it is always nice to kind of hit the double digits. And maybe we will continue to grow, and it is only through guys like Mark and yourselves that have sort of supported and shared and got the word out. Pay a little bit of attention to this guy. He does seem to know what he's talking about, and more than once, guys, I've called it. If you can remember back to January last year, I put some videos out. 2020, it is time to prep. Something's coming. 2 years ago, when I went on the Marfugel call, I said the world is due a psychological operation that is going to affect us all. And I'm still not ruling out that by the end of 2021, we're not going to see the aliens land on Earth. Something I do intend to do is come back tomorrow. I've got some Tavistock stuff to bring you. Those of you who did tune in to the 2 weeks of tea a little while ago, the Tavistock series, we did 2 parts on 2 nights in a row, 2-part on Tavistock. Actually got a lot of views and quite a lot of feedback, so I've got some more stuff to bring you on Tavistock in regards to who Tavistock are exactly, a little bit more how they're reaching, who exactly Tavistock do control and fund, and just what they've been looking at during the COVID-19 pandemic. And if or not, what they've been looking at was the desire to effects of the pandemic, you hopefully will find out tomorrow. And as I said, I do plan to bring you another stream tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Central. Set your alarms, set your reminders. I will try to let you know and give you a heads up on social media prior to the knowledge. But that is the intention for tomorrow, and then maybe Saturday night we will come back with some Alien Agenda updates, because guess what, people, 2021 has seen no end to the alien sightings and UFO reports around the globe, including a mothership sighting. Are they about to come down? Is that how it goes, Nancy? Not Nancy, Becky? And that's it. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And you know, that is all I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to inform people, and hopefully you guys will, if you do resonate with what I'm informing you with, choose to take it upon yourself to do a little bit more research and then inform your friends about what's going on, all the better. And this is what this is what I'm trying to do, just share what I have learned. Otherwise it's just me in a lonely basement wasting my time waiting to die. So at least let some of the hours and days I spent watching fiction, reading comic books, in sci-fi novels, let me put that to some use by decoding it and using it to maybe give us the ability to decode our realities that little bit better. Close to it is, yeah, anyway, we'll figure it out, baby P. And remember, it sounds like TSP TV. Although we're not TSP TV, this is Reality Decoded. Not exactly sure what to do with TSP TV. As you know, we do got about 4,000 subscribers over there, although some of those were bought and paid for, not actually real subscribers. But fight the algorithm however you can. But Reality Decoded was a little bit of a rebranding, relaunch, maybe a redirection. Maybe TSP TV might have been where I cut my teeth, may have become a little bit of a Frankenstein monster. Who knows? Maybe Reality Decoded will be the way forward from here. Or if or not we do open the doors to the thrift store again, I don't know. It'd be a shame to say goodbye, because we did put a lot of effort and time in there. We have some great memories, and that really was where the community was formed. But until we can go live over there, live is going to happen here at Reality Decoded. And I might try to upload the presentation after this as a standalone video for those of you who may or may not want to share that on your social media, to let people know we are getting very soylent green up here. Share if you agree. Copy and paste the wafer but change the color. Don't know what I'm trying to say there, but I think you do. The memetical mind control of social media is how they are manipulating the minds of the masses. I'm trying to free your mind, open the doors to perception, think for yourself, stop sharing, stop agreeing, stop being a human doing, re-embrace your human beingness, and start to, as I said, think about what you're doing before you're doing it. Be aware of your surroundings and the things that could be used against us under these tyrannous times right now. So anyway, let's say our goodbyes. As always, I've got to go and get my little cutesy dancing girl to see us out. Hold on a second, guys. We're not going to say goodbye just yet. But as I said, 2021 is not really sort of brought any improvements to the way life is. If anything, they've just brought more woes and stresses, particularly for those down in Texas that are suffering this freak of nature, man-made weaponized warfare event down there. So stay safe, Texans. Love from Canada and the Thrift Store Studio to you as always. Love and hugs to everybody who did tune in tonight. Thank you very much for your company. company, for your diligence and your patience getting through this. Hopefully tomorrow we will see you once again at Reality Decoded, where we open the doors to the Thrift Store studio once again at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, 7 if you're on the Pacific. And don't forget, if you do want to help out a broadcast honky, chuck a buck or two in my tip jar. It would be greatly appreciated. You do need to keep me in coffee, weed, and smokes the best you can in order for me to keep bringing you shit video productions. But until tomorrow, guys, take care, look after yourselves, keep it thrifty, and most importantly, be excellent to each other, and hope we do see you tomorrow. Shane Tuber. If you are late to the proceedings, sorry you missed it, but hopefully you won't miss tomorrow. Till then, take care, guys. God bless. May the force be with us.